Hey, what's up, everybody? This is just a random video I wanted to make on time travel and different versions of time traveling in movies. So I have this idea that there are basically three different types of time traveling scenarios, which I have identified in movies. The first one is called circular, or I call it, now I know that it has different names, but the first one I would call circular time traveling, which basically means that everything is going to happen the way that it was supposed to happen, right? Everything happens as it does when you go to the past. So a good example of this is obviously Harry Potter 3. Anybody that's watched Harry Potter knows that in Harry Potter 3 they do a time traveling montage, right? And but it's funny because when you're watching the movie, there are weird things that are like happening, right? And then when they travel back in time, you find out that the weird things that were happening were actually the things that they were doing when they traveled back in time, right? So everything is, logical, it's tight, there's no type of room for argumentation or any type of things like that. So that's the first time travel version. The second one is when you travel to the past and you change things in the past, so then you return to the present and things are changed, right? So it's changing the present, or even the future, right? Perfect example of this are the Back to the Future movies. I would say especially the second one and the third one. I think the first Back to the Future movie is actually a circular type of logic. But yeah, in this type of um, time traveling, what you do is that you go to the past and you change your present or your future, right? Okay, now we're gonna get into this because I have some things that I could complement with this. Well, now the third type, or the third type of time traveling is when you use time traveling not really to change anything, but you use it as a place, right? So, for example, the past could be a place. Um, a good example of this is the movie Avengers Endgame, because in this movie, the people go to the past, and when they go to the past, they just get something, right? Like in this case, they get the stones, right? The Infinity Stones, but they're not changing anything, right? They're just, it's like they go to Florida or they go to Europe or they go to, right? They just go there to the past to get something and then they return. So time traveling is in this case seen um, as your future, right? This is what Professor Hulk explains when he says, when you travel into the past, you're still in your future, right? Your time is still moving forward. So even though you're in the past, that's actually your future, right? And yeah, that's what he explains. So just to summarize the three types of time traveling scenarios in which I had: the circular one where everything happens the way it was supposed to happen, like Harry Potter 3. The second one would be changing something in the past to change the present or the future, like in Back to the Future 2 and 3. And the third type of time traveling would be when you just go to the past to get something, right? But you don't really change things. Okay, now I had made a video about this on my other channel, which was the like my English teacher channel, explaining the same thing. So this video could be done right now, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit on it because I was watching this video. I watched two videos. I'm gonna summarize the first one, and what they explained was the time traveling scenarios. They have 8 different types of time traveling. So when I heard that, I was like, "What?" I came up with three. How the hell did they come up with 8? But now I know that they were talking about different types of time travel. They even mentioned movies that I didn't think were time traveling movies, but they do have time travel, right? So the channel's called New Rock Stars. It's on YouTube, and the video is called Time Travel Possible. Is time travel possible or something like that? Eight types explained. They they call the first kind the fuck it um, type, which is basically like there's no logic in the things they do, right? Like people travel to the past, to the future, they do all types of crazy things. Things change, but they don't change, right? Um, so the and I was surprised because they included the Back to the Future movies in the fuck it timeline, because I guess when they go back to the past and they change the future or the present, like a lot of things that would imply, that would mean that other things would happen that they don't represent. They even go as far as to say that the best, most accurate time traveling movie is actually a movie called Prime. I think it's called Prime. It's a movie about two guys, and I think it was actually made. It was made on a low budget, and I think it was made by some guys that were in college, so they had like all the ideas like fresh. Some physicists or some scientists in college, and these guys. The movie is about two guys that I guess travel through time, but it has a lot of jargon. It has a lot of technical terms that you don't understand. You don't really understand what the hell's going on. But they say it's the most accurate time traveling movie to date, right? Where like time travel even like they take into consideration many things that would be real in time traveling. To the point where like if you travel back 6 hours, they have to wait 6 hours to get there. Think crazy things like that, right? Which a lot of these different types get into too. So it's not as simple as just going back and hey guys, I'm here. So the first one's fuck it, which is everything goes. The second type is the branch theory or the multiverse. Now, in Back to the Future one, I think the doc mentions this, or in the second one, he mentions how when you travel back in time and you do something to change it, you actually create a new timeline. They explain that in Avengers Endgame too. You create a new timeline, and when you create a new timeline, you're creating a new multiverse, right? So now we start talking about different types of multiverses, and yeah, that's the branch theory, right? Like how when you travel back in time, you're gonna create a bunch of different. Just the simple fact that you're traveling back in time, even if you say I don't touch anything, I don't even interact with my past self, you're changing molecules in the place where you arrive, right? Just that is already creating a new timeline. I think from a physicist perspective, or from a physical, like a quantum physics perspective. Okay, the third type is the time dilation, and I think this is like something that I didn't really consider, but they say that when you travel back in time or in the future or whatever, um, we all know the theory of relativity by Einstein, and I guess when you travel at the speed of light, you're going to age. Time is going to move faster for you, right? I think, which this means that um, what seems like maybe, or no, time is going to move slower for you. What may seem like, a day or a week for you is actually like 10 years back on Earth, right? I guess a perfect example of this was the Interstellar movie. And again, here I'm just summarizing these guys' as types, and then I'm going to get into my opinion about it. But yeah, in Interstellar, like the guy, I guess um, he's trying to get back to his daughter, but every like minute that passes where he's at is like years, back on Earth. So his daughter's like growing hella old. So that's the third type. The fourth type is this, they call it the this always happened, the circular type, which is like the Harry Potter 3. They mentioned the Harry Potter 3 movies. Well, the Harry Potter 3 movie, and they mentioned Terminator. I hadn't thought about that. I'm like, yeah, I guess Terminator is also this is the way things always happen. Terminator is a time traveling movie. I had never, I never even thought about that. But excuse me, everything that happens in Terminator happens the way it was supposed to happen, right? Like they travel back in time to try to stop, the machines, but then that creates the machines, and it's like cyclical, like it's you know um so yeah, they also mentioned Predestination, which I want to watch that movie because they said it was kind of cool. um that's the third type. The fourth type is seeing the future, which I think this is kind of like, it gets a little bit crazy here because like Oedipus, the Oedipus complex, where it's used in psychoanalysis and in Freud's psychoanalytical theories, where you have a prophecy, right? Like this baby says, okay, this baby is gonna grow up to kill his father, and he's gonna marry his mother, and so they ship the baby away, right? And he grows somewhere else far away from the kingdom, and then when like he grows up to be a great warrior, and then eventually he takes over this kingdom where he kills the king, and then he marries the king's wife, only to find out that he killed his father and he married his mother. Right? Or Scrooge, a Christmas Carol, where Scrooge is shown what his future is going to be like, and I think Tiny Tim dies or something like that, so he avoids that from happening. And yeah, they mentioned movies like Next and Knowing, which I haven't watched, and I want to watch those movies. But yeah, this one I was kind of like, whoa, okay, this is what I meant by, I hadn't thought about these type of movies as time traveling movies, but you're basically shown the future, and by seeing the future, you change your present, right? Because you, like, if someone says you're gonna die tomorrow, if a car, you're gonna die tomorrow in an accident, in a car accident. Well, you're probably not gonna go out tomorrow, right? To avoid that, and then you change your present, right? You change your future. I don't know. It gets kind of crazy. The other one, which this other video also, both videos call it this the Groundhog Day versions, which in this case we're talking about time loops, right? Maybe Dark, the series. I think I read a comment on that YouTube video where they said Dark was actually, the series Dark that deals with. I think it's the first series that actually talks about like um time and family, and how all that like across time could be crazy. It I don't think it's a time loop, but there are time loops in that series. But they say it's like that series is basically like a Harry Potter 3 time travel story, which is this always happens circular logic. But Groundhog Day is a time loop. I would call it more of a intense time loop. Movies like Happy Death Day, right? I've never seen Groundhog Day, but it's basically you wake up and you relive the same day, for example, or the same thing over and over and over and over again, but with the memories of the past experiences, right? Like in Happy Death Day, I think the protagonist dies over and over again in different ways, but they have the recollection, the memory of them dying, all those times. So they're trying to get out of the loop. Um, which again, I didn't really think of that as a time traveling movie, but I guess yeah, it is true. There's another how many do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the seventh one, the penultimate. The seventh one is consciousness displacement, which I guess this is when your mind travels, not your body, like in X-Men Days of Future Past. I gotta rewatch that movie because I'm not really sure how that works. But basically, your mind travels and your body doesn't. And the eighth type is the unstuck body, or the inverted entropy, which is inverted entropy over your body. This is exemplified, I think, the best in the Tenet movie. And they also mention a Doctor Strange movie where you use time in your favor, but in the moment, right? Like you'll change the trajectory of a bullet or an explosion. You'll do the explosion like backwards, so you don't get hit by it during a battle. So you'll fuck with time, but in this case, you're fucking with time with your body, right? With the physical objects. I mean, you're like, okay, I'm gonna move, that explosion, I'm gonna rewind it or things like that. So, which I think they say that in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, is theoretically possible, and this could help like stop aging in humans. So, kind of like slow down the process of aging and us getting older and sick and dying. Um, but yeah, for now it's just theory. Okay, so those are the 8 types where I was like, okay, whoa, this is it's not what I was expecting. It's not based on my 3 theories that I had initially. This covers like more ground, right? And these guys on this channel had a lot of examples, right? I was like, they were just, talking about movies, and I haven't watched that many movies on time travel, or I didn't know they were time traveling, like the Terminator or like Scrooge. And what was the other one I mentioned? Yeah, the Oedipus story. Okay, so then I went to this other channel which they mentioned on that channel. The channel's called Minute Physics, and the video's called Time Traveling Fiction Rundown. And basically what they do is they also try to like break it down based on the movies. They talk about time dilation. You have to consider time dilation because when you return from time traveling, you're going to be older or younger, or people are going to be older or younger, right? So you're going to be out of sync with the people, right? Because of time dilation, right? Because of you traveling at the speed of light. Um, they mentioned the other one, the self-consistent one, which is the circular one, right? Where everything happens the way it was supposed to happen, or the new changed history, which is when you travel to the past and you change your present or your future, right? They do they cover the Groundhog Day also, which they call it like a do-over, right? Like in video games. So it's like what's gonna happen, and now you get a second chance to like change it, right? With the recollection or with the memory of what just happened. Like video games, like Happy Death Day, like the Christmas Story. Um, well, the Christmas Story here is you viewing the future, and that changes the trajectory because you have the memory, right? So it is kind of fucking around now a lot with memory. It's like you travel, you change, but you're gonna have, the memory of what you just did, and that's also going to influence, right? Which is a big thing also right now when I break it down, when I give you my opinion, my personal opinion about all this. Um, and then there's the going back or forward creates new versions, like Back to the Future, right? Which is similar to the new change or history in the past. Um, and they also mention how in Harry Potter 3 and these type of circular, logical time traveling movies, like close circle, close loop, everything happens as it was supposed to happen. There's no real free will because you already know what's going to happen. Even the characters know what's going to happen, right? To a certain extent. Um, Okay, so then I'm gonna break it down right here. Um, First of all, I think personally now, after seeing all this, it's different. I would start to subdivide the movies maybe into the movies that deal with the past and the movies that deal with the future, because I think it's different. It's different type of time travel, right? When you travel to the past, you're either traveling to change something, to get something, right? Because you want your present to improve, to be better. And when you're talking about maybe not traveling to the future, but like seeing the future, or maybe even traveling to the future and seeing how it's going to be, it's kind of the same thing, because you're going to come back to the present and change things so that they happen in a different way, right? So they can be better. Um, but it's different because when you're talking about the past, you're talking about things that, um, like you're probably going to be interacting with yourself, right? And that's also going to branch off into a different reality, right? And then you have the reality where things are the way that they have been or they had been, and then the other reality or the other multiverse where things are a different way. And then when you're talking about the future, right? Like seeing the future, you changing that future. I mean, you also have a future where, you know, in theory, that thing that was supposed to happen happened that way. But then another future, which is the future that you have, where you made improvements, right? And then that's the one that you're going to be living on, right? So it does kind of branch off too, but it branches off in different ways, I think, because over here you just don't care about that other one. And in the past, you that could potentially affect in some way, you know, because they could like cross intersect or something like that. I don't know, that would be like kind of getting into some crazy shit, right? But yeah, it is different to travel to the past than the future, or at least if it's the same thing, you can try to kind of like distinguish between the movies that deal with the past and the movies that deal with the future, right? I think that's a good way to like subcategorize them. If you're trying to get all scientific, which many people do, because they want to know the accuracy or how close, how real it is to the actual science or to the actual theories, you know, they'll take into consideration time dilation, um, you know, all sorts of these other types of, you know, like the movie Prime, where you have to actually like wait that amount of hours to go back, etc. Right? Um, Also having memory, right? If you have memory, like I was talking about that, if you have memory of the past, it's going to influence, uh, you know, how you conduct yourself now. Maybe there were things that you didn't view, but the same thing could happen. And even, you know, if you memory doesn't really come into play if you're talking about the past because you already know what happened, but memory will come into play if you're talking about the future, right? So memory is a big deal in future time traveling movies, but not so much in past traveling movies, right? That's kind of what I would say about that. um so yeah, when you're traveling back to the past, like for example, you do that in Harry Potter 3, or Back to the Future, like in Back to the Future, or Scrooge, right? To change the present, you do that to change the present circumstances, like I just mentioned, right? And then there's another thing that we have to consider: if you interact with yourself or not, right? Um, because if you interact with yourself, you're really, for example, let's say you go back to the past and then you do something to change, right? So it branches off into a second, like, you know, multiverse, and then you interact with yourself. So then that person is now having new knowledge, right? That could potentially branch off into three different branches, right? So that would get kind of crazy. So if you interact with yourself, you branch off. But even if you don't, like I was saying, even if you don't touch anything and you don't interact with yourself, the molecules that are being affected by you just being there, right, are probably making a new timeline, right? That's why it's very popular nowadays to look at multiverses, like with the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, or with the Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, right? Where, you know, the multiverses are actually a consequence of the whole sci-fi time traveling movies. Um, yeah, so there's another universe because you already lived the one where you weren't in the case of the past, right? And yeah, I think from there it could get like super crazy. But I think that the big problem with time traveling movies is the loopholes that people find in them, right? Because they say, well, how is this possible? Like for example, Avengers Endgame, in superficially, like I just explained, it's pretty straightforward, right? They travel back to the past, they get the stones or the, you know, the Infinity Stones, and they come back to the present. Simple. But people are like, hell no, because they just traveled to the past and they interacted with them, with themselves or with these other people. They did these type of things. So then they're branching off into different, timelines, basically into different multiverses. And that's why you got like the Doctor Strange movie, the Multiverse of Madness, which actually didn't really deal with time traveling and multiverses. In my opinion, they also use multiverses as a, and this was my problem with with the whole multiverse like popularity right now, that they're not really using multiverses as something that that could interrelate within themselves. They're using multiverses as places, right? So what's the big difference between saying, oh, this person, was in Japan and then was in Italy and then was in Mexico and then was in the United States, as saying this person was in a cartoon multiverse and in a black and white drawing multiverse and in a painted multiverse and in where everyone's a rock multiverse. If they're not really interacting, they're just like places, so it's like, oh, look at the pretty colors, it's a multiverse, it's crazy. Oh, it's really crazy because they're just places. You're not actually dealing with time anymore, which was my problem when I saw this Rick and Morty episode that dealt with multiverses. But again, they were just dealing with them like places, like I'm at my house, I'm at my job, I'm on the street, I'm on multiverse one, multiverse two, multiverse three, but there was really no, time traveling consequence to that. And multiverses are a product of time traveling because they split off from there, right? Um, so yeah, that's basically my problem. And like I was saying, the problem with many people is that there are like all these loopholes, right? That they say, well, okay, like these guys on this channel, we're talking about how Captain America does the famous scene where he says "Hail Hydra," right, on the elevator, and the people from Hydra are just kind of like, or Shield or whatever the fuck they were just kind of like, what? And they don't deal with that after in the post movies or the movies after that, right? They're just like, oh yeah, like that was fun, and that's it, right? And instead they make these movies, these new movies, like, oh, look at the crazy multiverses and look at the crazy colors, and like that famous Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness scene where he's like diving through different multiverses, and it's like, boom, look at the colors and look at the different like structures of the multiverses, but nothing really happens between them, right? There's no interaction between the multiverses, there's no time traveling consequences, right? They're just places. um so yeah, many people are like, what's happening with like and I think that if like the movies that would have that the movies that come out actually dealt with trying to explain what those multiverses would create, which I think is a mess, a complete mess, right? But that would be fun to see. I think that would try to somewhat explain the loopholes that all these people are like, that can't be right, and that they would also satisfy my need of actually seeing some interaction among the universes and actually exploring them and seeing what are the actual consequences of having multiverses and different timelines in the universe or in universes. So yeah, anyway, I thought I'd just make this random video because these 8 types of different time traveling movies came up, and I was like, what? I had my own theory that I developed on my own with these 3 types of movies or these 3 types of time traveling, but there are more, and now we're considering like other things, like more scientific things like time dilation, or even these type of prophecy future type of things, or or like time, using time travel like to fight a battle or things like that, like in Tenet and this Doctor Strange sequence. But yeah, that's all I got for this episode. And I will We'll see you all next time. Peace out.